Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix versus Cinema. And if I may, I mean, Sean's just done a picture quiz and she's spoken about Stanley Tucci, and it's a bit of like a tribute to Stanley Tucci because we've heard that he's ill. And if I may, my name is Tosin. I am the host of the show. I live up in a place called Bromsgrove in the middle of the country. And I would like to dedicate this episode of this show to a guy called Matthew Mills. Now, Matthew Mills was the first sort of key worker for my daughter when we took her to nursery. And just before Christmas, we found out that he had died the night before my daughter was supposed to go into nursery. Yeah, he was only 22. He apparently suffered from asthma, and he had an asthmatic attack and didn't make it to the hospital. And
my goodness me.
yeah, it was his funeral today. And I'd just like to say to Matt, he's a guy who essentially, before I took a daughter into nursery, I was racked with, should we even be doing this? Oh my God, I don't want her to hang around weird people. What kind of weird person wants to spend all day hanging around somebody else's kid?
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And I was thinking that, but then meeting Matt and seeing the kind of love he showed my daughter and everything like that, it just kind of like put me at ease. And it's one of those things where it still doesn't sound right to say that he's gone, but Matt, wherever you are, thank you very, very much.
Oh, that's it.
Hopefully that's not too much of a downer to start the podcast off on. But I would joining me as usual and being a downer, having the downer being put on them by myself. On the Isle of Wight is Sharon Bolland.
Hello.
And Sean Harris.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so after a couple of lean weeks where people have just left the runway free for Avatar to do its thing and Avatar to take off, we now have a bit of a bumper week where we have 4 films to talk about. So we are going to try and run through them. We're not going to tell you what they are. If you want, they're in the description of this podcast. If you listen to the podcast on audio, if you're watching this online, you can see it. It's there. If you're watching it online, just look at the description on Facebook. It tells you what films it is that we're watching. But we are going to kick off straight away, and we're going to kick off in cinema, as is our want, where we usually start off. And we're going to start off with I Want to Dance with Somebody. So, Sharon, you and Sean have both seen this, but Sharon, if you could please tell us a little bit about I Want to Dance with Somebody. Your 5 minutes start now.
Right, this is a film biopic, as we've become quite familiar with over the last few years, following in the footsteps of Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man. And there's another one that's just gone out of my head, but there's been a few lately, and this is a biopic of the life of Whitney Houston. And if you're like me, I knew exactly 4 things about Whitney Houston. I knew that she sang I Want to Dance with Somebody. I knew that she starred in the film The Bodyguard. I knew that she had an interview with Oprah Winfrey where she said crack is whack, and I knew that she died in the bath. And that's it. So I went to see this film because a friend of mine was a huge fan of Whitney Houston, and she said, "Oh, can we go and see that?" And it's just like, yeah, all right, okay. So we went along. So it starts off with Whitney as a teenager. Basically, she's in a choir. Her mum, Sissy Houston, was a famous singer in her day, sort of like a Motown type singer, and she had a choir, a proper gospel choir. And she'd heard, she noticed obviously that Whitney had a voice. And so she was doing backing singing. And this was at the time when she was just trying to find her own space. And so you see you start meeting Whitney as a teenager when she starts to basically be talent spotted. And then she meets the character played by Stanley Tucci, who says, yes, she has something and we're going to sort of do something with this girl. And then you basically chart her life and her musical successes. And as her sort of musical sort of successes sort of rose, in some ways her like personal life, one was in the ascendancy and the other one became sort of like started to descend. So you see that when she was a teenager, she used to smoke cannabis with her friend. I had no idea about her sort of sexuality, or even though there was questions about her sexuality, but it makes it clear in this film that she did have a close relationship with another woman, that they lived together, that they were, intimate, romantically involved with each other. And you see that, but how it was kept secret so that she could become like an America's sweetheart type figure.
Yeah,
And
I'm thinking. I thought I knew quite a bit about Whitney Houston. I did not know that.
So I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea about that. And then you see how she had successes sort of start, coming with. She had to hit singles, she has these television appearances, but she also gains a bit of a reputation for being, as she says, not obedient enough, not feminine enough, because she would not, take any nonsense from anyone. And part of that was she got criticism from the black community for not basically being black enough in terms of her music. That she was a bit too pop to be, like a real black singer.
But that's a really good. That's a really good scene, actually. That radio scene.
There's a good scene.
That was a really good scene.
And then you follow her successes, where she is making millions and millions of dollars. She has every success, but she has got this sort of. Then she meets Bobby Brown, this sort of young and up and coming sort of hip hop singer, who gives her a little bit of like an edge, and but parallel to this, you also see the fact that her domestic life becomes more that she is relying on drugs to get her through some of her high performances. But to replace that energy she gets from the audience, she uses drugs to replicate that high. And how ultimately all these things come to a crescendo, and the fact that her misuse of drugs had led to start affecting her voice, and it ultimately led her to making some poor choices that ended up in her death. They do sort of, you see her in the bathroom on the night that she died, but then it sort of shies away from the actual what happened. So I only know what I had heard broadly, that she was in the bath and that she'd had drugs in her system. So for me, it was a bit of an eye-opener.
I didn't even know that. I didn't even know what I thought she was still about.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So I'll let you come in a minute. Come in on this story, so you can have your input as well. So I found it interesting. I didn't know much about it. I got the feeling though that they had probably sanitized quite a lot of her life.
Yeah.
Because there was no mention of the crack is whack interview was not meant for. They referenced that she was going to have an interview with Oprah, but you didn't actually see any of that. I mean, that's the only bit I knew was like, crack is whack. I'd never use crack. Blah, blah, blah. There was no reference to that in there, other than they're setting her up that she's going to sing for Oprah and she's going to have this interview. They see musical performances throughout the film. I didn't know any of the songs apart from the really big ones. So yeah, it was interesting. It's a bit of an eye-opener, but I got the feeling that they probably concealed as much as they revealed in this film. So see what you think. Tell me what you think about it as well, Shawnee.
Wow. Okay, you really want to know? I was like you, Shaun. I didn't know much about her. I was aware of her at the time. I wasn't into that sort of music. I didn't even know much about her. I saw this because I thought, well, we need to see something extra, and the timings were really, really good. And I was absolutely blown away by it. I thought it was the most. Not so much all the back of the scene, but the singing. I tell you, I've never had a gamut of emotions. I was crying even through songs I didn't know. And when they did the Super Bowl performance, which is what I knew her for more than anything. Yeah. There was just two old ladies. They were laughing at me because I was streaming tears. So,
really?
Yeah,
that surprises me because I wasn't moved in the slightest.
No, I was not absolutely blown away.
My musical ear. Yeah.
No, I've been listening to that all day. I've been listening to stuff all day. I've been looking about Whitney. This for me she's absolutely. I mean, I do like that high pitched sort of singing. I mean, I like, like the spaghetti western soundtracks when you have those big sopranos. They do those big voices, big loud voices. So yeah, I was. You wouldn't believe me. You wouldn't believe me how much tear I was absolutely. Like when things stir you. I was sat. I was going to say this to Shaun. I was going to tell you, but I didn't want to. I was like, I just wanted to say, oh, I wasn't going
to laugh at you.
No, I know. So, but yeah, I mean, some of the songs I know, like no, I can't do that.
No way.
And
I was living without you.
That Whitney, and even it drove me mad at the time. The song from The Bodyguard.
Yeah.
Even that even brought tears. Believe it or not, and I'd hated that song when it came out. I
You're
absolutely.
making me feel like I'm a hard-hearted
No,
woman.
you're not.
I did
No,
not.
it's like that.
I
It's
was
like
not
that.
moved
No,
by
no.
any of the music at
I
all.
was, but I think that's purely a surprise because I was going in with really, really low expectations. I thought, oh wow, this will be the. I mean, the Bobby Brown bit I found a little bit like when it was all that business. I didn't like that, but for the actual, well, I did like it, but I just thought, oh come on, get on with the singing. I mean, she was. What? And I think, I mean, I had a look at that Dennis Norton. Is it Dennis Norton does the interviews with the actress who played whoever it was, that actress. She's an English
Graham
actress.
Norton. Graham Norton.
Yeah, Graham Norton. That's it.
Yeah, and Naomi
Who's
Aki.
Dennis Norton?
Naomi Aki plays Whitney Houston in this. Yeah,
and I think
I didn't know she was English.
No.
Oh no.
Well,
Yeah,
I had this plan because I get into work early sometimes. I had some Whitney music playing, and so they come and said, "Oh, that's not Whitney Houston singing now." And I was like, "What? Really?" I thought because she was saying, was she miming or was she actually singing?
Oh, it's
a mixture, I think. Yeah,
it's a mixture, and Naomi Aki herself said that it's mostly recordings of Whitney Houston.
Stuff. Yeah,
it's
Whitney
mostly
Houston,
recordings of Whitney Houston because the truth is Whitney Houston had a voice of a generation. Like it's the kind of person where people said you had Aretha Franklin and then you had Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
And since Whitney Houston, they think Mariah Carey might have gotten a little bit close, but honestly, Whitney Houston is, when you talk about, being driven to tears, and I know that there have been quite a few good documentaries about Whitney Houston that have been made that talk about, like, explore her relationship with Black America, for instance, and how when she had that Super Bowl performance and she sang the Star Spangled Banner.
I nearly stood up. I swear, I was this close to standing up and putting my hand on my heart. Really
never did.
No.
Well, I'm a real Americophile, so
we know this about
that
Shaun.
Super Bowl. I remember that from like '98. I remember Buffalo Bills Giants, and when she sang that, and it was like, and I remember my dad saying, "Wow, that's the best rendition of the American national anthem I've ever heard."
Well, we know Shaun
moved me that much.
We know Shaun is pretty much a cowboy, all right? Shaun is pretty much a cowboy. But the thing is, even that song, like, because a lot of Black people in America, because of the history of American slavery and everything like that, they have a very, very complicated relationship with that national anthem.
Oh, because do they? I didn't know that.
They have a massive complicated relationship. And the point where Whitney Houston sang the Star Spangled Banner and gospeled it up, that was when I think there was a lot of Black Americans who were kind of like, oh, good Lord, now, okay, maybe there is something in there for us. Maybe we are part of this and all that. So, okay, this is all well and good. Now, this is a film that because obviously I have like limited time on which I can watch stuff, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a musical biopic. And quite frankly, I am not a fan of musical biopics because they all follow the same structure. They follow the same thing. You know what's going to happen, and you've watched them all, just replace the main person. So what did you guys think about it? How many stars did you give it? Was I wrong to not have this as one of the things I was going to watch? There might be different answers to this, but
I think you would have enjoyed it. I mean, for me, I've seen biopics. The last biopic I saw which I thought was really moving, was the one about Ian Jury. I can't remember what it was called, but that was on. So, but yeah, no, I mean, some of the biopics, I think, I don't know, like that Rocket Man and like Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't know, that was more. This film for me was more about the music than and I mean, it's give me a really big appreciation of Whitney, and as I say, I've been playing all day,
All right, good stuff. So the film's done something good. Oh, also, you saw Elvis. Elvis is another biopic.
Other biopic,
yes.
Yeah.
So that's one that escaped me.
Okay, so Shaun, how many stars?
Okay, well, from an emotional standpoint, I would give this 5 stars, but I think because of some of the other stuff, and I think it's going to have to be a 4, because I mean there were a few issues in it. But so good old Stanley did his glass trick, which I love what he does with his 3 fingers, and he takes his. In his films, if you notice, he takes his glasses off a certain way with one. This sort of, I can't do it with this finger, but he sort of has this finger here. So yeah, and he was all right in this. Bless him.
Yeah, okay. For those of you who do not know, Shaun has a particular vendetta against Stanley Tucci.
Not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore, because obviously there's unfortunate things happening in his life. So Shaun is calling a truce. But I think that's just the way, because he has this cooking program on BBC where he goes around Italy cooking food. And I think that's just the way he takes his glasses off, quite frankly. Okay, sorry, Sharon.
Well, as someone who is not, that's not my sort of music. So in some ways I can appreciate some of it, but it largely leaves me quite cold, to be honest with you. So yeah, I wasn't moved by the music. I find it interesting. It's an interesting film to sort of tell me things about her I didn't know. I think, because again, I have this sort of belief that there's probably a lot that that was left out.
Yep.
For me, it was a 3. It was a 3. It was it was all right. But yeah, it's not my music. It hasn't converted me to listening to that type of music. I'm not a fan of that sort of singing, or Mariah singing, or Beyonce singing, or that type of, I've got 4 octaves, so I'm going to put every single one of them in every single song. I'm not into that. So yeah, for me, it was 3.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's quite funny, because I listen to, like, well, not all the time, but sometimes I listen to like Sopranos, and I don't know if it's a male thing or female thing, but my sister doesn't like it. My mum doesn't like that type of singing, and it's really good. And yet to me, it really, really, I don't know, it does something to me. I mean, I think it comes from those spaghetti westerns where it's like, oh.
Well, look, I think Whitney Houston had a brilliant voice. I think she had a brilliant voice. I think there's very few people who could match. No, actually, there's very few people who could even get close to matching her. But I do know that it is some people do not like that sort of soul R&B thing, and that's okay. So let's move on, because
Toast, can I just ask you? I know we've been on this a little bit a long time, but what's the feedback been from the movie? What's the general? Have you looked at all? What's the general?
The general feedback, I think, it has just backed up what I thought. It's a musical biopic. It's going to go through the whole thing. You're going to have the bit where they were young and they started singing. You're going to have the bit where they get discovered. You're going to have the bit where somebody exploits them.
But I mean, has it
fall into
had
drugs.
Good reviews? Has it has good reviews generally?
Generally speaking, I think probably about 3 out of 5. It's probably like middle of the road things, which, quite frankly, I don't think a musical biopic could go higher than that, unless you do something like an Elvis, which apparently was just mad. I still haven't seen Elvis. So, yeah, but from what I hear, the performance of Naomi Aki is good. What would you guys say about that?
That's what I did. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That's the rest of the film is probably it, but the actual music, well, it certainly stirred something in me. Certainly did.
All right.
Yeah, she certainly. I don't know much about her, so every now and then I was trying to see a likeness. So I was thinking, I don't quite see the likeness, but every now and then something like a turn of the head or a movement, I was thinking, yeah, that reminds me of The Little I Knew. That does say Whitney. So I thought, from what, my little knowledge was like, yeah, she did it quite well.
Yeah. I mean, there was a thing on YouTube, because I've been looking at YouTube, where they're actually comparing. They've got like a split screen. Yeah, the performance that one was singing no living. I didn't know, I didn't really know any of those songs, because when she was out, I was like, oh, not interested in Whitney. So yeah, but that they've got them actually compared, and it's like the same performance. She's in that black suit, and it's like the same performance. Yeah. So I don't know. It was obviously a later one, but
yeah. All right. Okay. Cool. So we have to move on. Even though I can see Shaun's getting all emotional again and still wants to keep talking about this, we do have to move on. So if not, we will be here for a while, and we only try and give ourselves an hour, both to record this and for you to listen to this, because who wants to listen to us prattling for longer than that? But now we go over to Netflix and Friends, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is Mammals. Now, this is James Corden back on TV, back in scripted TV after his stint in America hosting the Late Late Show, or the Late 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 Show. I can never remember what happens with all these late night talk shows in America. There are. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is between all of them. Honestly, I don't know. I just don't understand it. But James Corden went out there, became stupidly successful. He had his carpool karaoke and all that kind of stuff. And this is him back doing something dramatic, doing something that's scripted. It's called Mammals. It's on Amazon Prime. It's scripted by a guy called Jez Butterworth, who No, okay, and this is I keep mixing up Jez Butterworth with Jed Mercurio because Jed Mercurio writes Line of Duty. Jez Butterworth is the playwright who wrote things like Jerusalem and works a lot with Mark Rylance. So this is the playwright, Jez Butterworth, and he is known for writing like really really highly acclaimed things and all that. And this is him working with James Corden. And James Corden is actually quite a good actor because if you get away from his public persona, which is like him being the talk show host and everything like that, and it seems to be the done thing to just yell at James Corden and say how rubbish he is. But James Corden is actually a good. I saw him on stage in One Man Two Governors, really good guy. And in this, he plays a chef. I cannot remember the names of anybody in this thing. He plays a chef, and you meet him with he and his wife are driving down to the coast somewhere in the UK for a holiday. She's pregnant. She's French, and they're driving down there for like a holiday. Everything is supposed to be a baby moon before the baby arrives, and he's getting there. We got to get in there because we're going to see the sunset. We're going to see the sunset. Yeah, and he gets there, jumps into the hot tub to see the sunset with his wife, and then she calls him in and says something's wrong. The next thing is that they go to the hospital. They have bad news. But while he's at the hospital and he has bad news, he has her phone and he receives a text on her phone that makes him start questioning everything about his relationship and everything about his marriage and what actually has been going on. So it follows on with, and I'm not sure whether it's a spoiler to tell you exactly what it is he finds on the text, but let's say that this show starts in exploring things about infidelity. And it starts exploring things about infidelity and about what that means and about how he and his wife got together in the first place, because he looks like James Corden, and I cannot remember the lady's name, but she's a French actress who looks a bit like a model, quite frankly. And so it's like, how did this thing work? How do these two guys go together? And you also get to meet his sister, played by Sally Hawkins, and her husband, played by Colin Morgan. And you have Sally Hawkins, who has, I just remembered, there's this really, really weird thing that Sally Hawkins does where she escapes into like a literary world, a literary fantasy world. I'm just gonna say that the Sally Hawkins bit makes no sense to me. I don't understand why Sally Hawkins is in this show because I think it's supposed to be artistic, but I don't know where it gets. The way the show goes on, it's supposed to be like, an artistic thing of, let's have a look at like, fidelity and what that means and whether it means anything to actually like, only sleep with one person or to be beholden to one person for the rest of your life. Some of it I thought was dramatic tosh. Quite frankly, I feel like, when somebody writes something and they write it because they're expecting you to feel like this is artistic or they're expecting you to feel like this is profound. And I'm like, no, it isn't. This doesn't make any sense. This is not. And where this show ends, the final scene of this show is just such a head scratcher. And it's the kind of thing where I've gone online to see where people sort of like try and explain what the final scene of this show means and everything like that. And this may be terrible. This may be just me sort of like projecting my own things, but when it is I always think of university students, and you have like, imagine if there's a university student who deliberately walks around with a scarf and a beret, and they're walking around and say, oh no, you see what they're trying to say here is that the human condition is, and I feel like those are the kind of people who are trying to explain this show and are trying to say this show actually means something, and this show is actually saying something profound. And I don't have anything against, I mean, it's okay if you're that kind of person, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I find it pretentious. And there was a law of this show that I just kind of thought, why? It's been a couple of months it's been out now. It had quite a bit of hype when it released because it's Jez Butterworth, because it's James Corden. I didn't really think it deserved that. I thought that the story was quite slight. I thought that it has maybe about 3 scenes that move the story along. The rest of it, I think, is just treading water. I think it's about 6 episodes. I would give it a 3 out of 5. And if you wanted to watch it, go ahead. There's a lot more spoilerific stuff I can talk about. And I think it's the kind of thing that you could sit down and you could say, do you think that, like, let's say you guys watched it, right? And we would sit down and my questions would be like, do you think that worked? What do you think about that? Do you think this? And I just don't think it held itself well together. Don't think it was worth the hype, and I would give it a 3 out of 5. So I still think James Corden is a good actor, but this was a weird show. Right, and now we go back to cinema, and oh my God, it's me again. So we're gonna talk about Matilda the musical. So yes, Matilda the musical. Now roll down. Okay, Sharon, you must have read Matilda, the book.
No,
You've
it came
never
out
read.
when I was grown up, so I never read it as a child. It was one of that period of books that happened when I was like a teen, and
But,
so because they were children's, and I've never since gone back and read Matilda.
but you must have read some Roald Dahl.
Oh yeah, I've read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and his early stuff. Yeah,
Oh, so have you read any of it since you were an adult?
no,
Oh wow, okay. None of this is actually the review. I'm just intrigued. But so
I
Matilda,
might do. It's one of those I do. Sometimes I go back and revise, thinking I've never read the Womble books, so I'll gone and read all the Womble books just because I like to fill in those gaps in my knowledge. But so yeah, I may go back and revisit Roald Dahl's that catalogue.
all right, cool. Sean, did you ever see it?
What, Matilda?
Yeah.
I saw it. I went on a school trip to New York and saw it in the.
Oh, you saw the
on
stage show
Yeah, I saw the stage show. Yeah,
in New York.
In New York, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, cool.
So that was just before. Yeah. So I went to see, and I went to. It was with a school trip, with a drama trip, and we did like a couple of workshops. We did because I always remember there was like a stage combat workshop with like when people get hold of your head. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Cool.
I've done
I
one
got a
of
little
those.
video of it somewhere of the thing, not of Matilda, but the theatre because you couldn't. But
Yeah.
So
Okay, cool. So I've wasted about 2 minutes of this already. Sorry if you clicked on YouTube to watch the review of Matilda and I haven't said anything yet. So this is based on the book by Roald Dahl, which was turned into a film in the 90s with Danny DeVito, and then it was turned into a musical by Tim Minchin. Tim Minchin wrote the songs for Matilda, and that stage musical that Sean saw in New York has now been turned into a film. And the plot of Matilda is basically that. The film starts off, and it starts off with a shot of a baby, and the first song has the opening lines are "My mommy says I'm a miracle," and it's all these babies singing about how that how lovely it is that the parents think and what the parents thought when they were born. Then you cut to Matilda's mum, who's sat there pregnant in a chair, and the doctor is saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, but you're having a contraction." And she's like, "No, I'm not having a contraction. Contraction is for pregnant women." And then she's in total denial of the fact that she's having a baby. Then eventually she has to have this baby. She has the baby, and then the dad. So the mom is played by Andrea Riseborough. The dad is played by Stephen Graham, and this is Stephen Graham in usually he plays he does quite intense roles, and this is him in. He's having the whale of a time. He shows up at the hospital with the balloon saying it's a boy, and the doctor is like, "Congratulations, here's your baby girl." He's like, "No, it isn't. It's it's a son." He's like, "No, you've got a daughter." He's like, "But the balloon says it's a boy. It's a boy." And so you get the idea that Matilda, through her whole life, this is almost kind of like the proto Harry Potter. Like her parents don't want her. She is an inconvenience to her. They keep her up in the attic, even though the house is quite lavish and it's set in the 80s. It's quite lavish in an 80s way. Like everything is too big. Everything is sort of gold plated. But she stays in this attic bare thing where there's just bare floorboards and all that kind of stuff in the loft. And it turns out that she's quite smart. So she spends a lot of time in the library reading a lot of books. She knows a lot more than you would think. Her parents have refused to send her to school because they just forgot about it. And then the school shows up and says, "Oh, we think Matilda should come to the school." She goes to a school called Cruncham Hall that's run by somebody called Mrs. Trunchbull, and Mrs. Trunchbull hates kids. That's it. She's kind of like the headmistress from hell, and it's all about what Matilda does when she gets to the school and how she more or less starts a revolution at this school against Mrs. Trunchbull, while at the same time rediscovering who. We'll find it almost like a coming of age thing, but at the same time, she has telekinetic powers. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but this is a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, okay, I think Sharon, you and I, we love film musicals. I know, Sean, you have certain ones that you like.
Yes. Yep.
And for ages, there have been attempts to bring a film musical back, like La La Land, or to update a film musical. You've got La La Land. They did one with the producers. You had The Greatest Showman, and even though Cyrano,
which I liked.
Yeah, and but the thing is, a lot of them, when I've watched them, I've always felt this isn't quite gelling the way, a 1950s musical gels. There's something that doesn't quite work here. Where they switch into song, it doesn't feel natural. Where there's something about the way the film looks that doesn't feel right. if as much as I've liked some of these films, and this is the first musical I've seen in absolute ages where I've thought, yes, this works. It goes, it flows. This works really, really well. Matilda and the musical and everything works really well. The songs are brilliant. The performances are great with Lashana Lynch as Mrs. Honey, with Emma Thompson plays Mrs. Trunchbull, and you can see that she's this is a theme. She's having a whale of a time. Emma Thompson is just loving being terrible to all these children. It is amazing, and I would recommend Matilda. I think Matilda musical is great. I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. I would say go watch it if it's still there, because I think we caught one of the last showings, and I may have a particularly like a particular emotional connection to this because I took my daughter. It was the first time I taken my daughter to the cinema to go see the film, and we didn't have to leave the cinema. She sort of like sat down whenever they were singing and dancing. She was just kind of like enraptured, just looking at the screen. Once they started talking, she was like, "Daddy, Mommy!" Like almost like, "Get them singing again. Why they stop singing?" and I think the singing, the dancing numbers, the kid performers. Oh my God! There's one particular number that they do where the camera moves around and everything like that. Yeah, okay. Shaun, I'll put it this way: if you gave me a chance of saying which is the better film musical, this or West Side Story, for my money, it's Matilda the musical. I prefer Matilda the musical to West Side Story because I thought the same problem with the new West Side Story, which was that there was something about it that didn't quite gel as a film musical. So yeah, 4 stars for Matilda the musical. And now we go back to Netflix and Friends, and this is Shaun with All Quiet on the Western Front. You've been waiting a couple of weeks to talk about this, haven't you?
Yes. So yeah, okay. So the story, it's about this young German lad that the war's going on, obviously, and he lives in this idyllic German village, which is, just like you would think, just typical like German. And anyway, and he's sort of, him and his friends, they're all really, really excited to join up, so they volunteer to join, and then obviously they end up fighting. They end up with a bit of trench warfare. There's a few battle scenes, some things happen. They lose some people. He goes back home on leave but of course things are not the same. He's like, things are totally different, and he can't wait to get back to join his friends, even though it's horrific and it's horrible. He still wants to. So the war's sort of done something to him. He got his granddad asking him all about, what's going on. He doesn't really want to talk about it. So he goes back, and then there's a lot more fighting, I guess, a lot more stuff in the trenches. They take trenches, they find stuff. So a typical, like most World War I movies, quite anti-war.
So it's World War One.
It's World War One, yeah. So it's trench warfare.
Yeah.
So one of his friends loses a leg. So there's a few scenes in there where, you've got the hospital scenes where there's a lot of injuries, a lot of death, and and then you've got the mud. It's just, and the no man's land with, so just like I don't know, like 1917 or War Horse or any of those. It's what else is? With World War One, it wasn't like big sweeping cavalry charges and massive. It was pretty much a slugfest. They were just
only
slugging
the first couple of months of the war.
Only the first couple of months, yeah, that's right.
After that, it was they didn't move.
So so that's basically the story. It's a World War One movie about the horrors of war, about a young people going into war with rose tinted glasses and thinking, oh, we're going to be heroes. It's going to be great fun and all that, and then obviously, like in most wars, becoming a little bit jaded, PTSD, and just that's it really. It's like a change, it's like a change, isn't it? It's from innocence to just horror and things that shouldn't be seen and things that shouldn't be done. So so that's basically the story. Okay, feelings on it. I thought it was very well done. Obviously it was dubbed, and there's a scene at the end where they're coming because it's towards the end of the war, and they're coming to the armistice, where you've got like a general on a balcony saying, we've got to do the last charge, but we've got to get as much ground as we can before. And it's just like, and you can see the look on their faces. It's like, why? Do you know what I mean? On the 11th hour of the 11th day, that's when the armistice, and there's like about an hour left. So, we've got to go and get as much ground as we can. And of course, it's obviously what's going to happen, with that. This film, yeah, it was pretty good. It wasn't anything really new that I've seen, and obviously, and I think there were a couple of scenes towards the end with. I just mentioned a couple of bits which I thought maybe it was for effect, but I couldn't really see. Let's just say flamethrowers, and I know there were flamethrowers, but not like hundreds of them, not like the Empire Strikes Back type of thing. So there were I had a few issues with it towards the end, with like some of the tanks and some of that. It was a bit CGI, but I guess that was just purely to say the horrors, people getting squashed and burnt and what have you. So, but yeah, so I would have to say this was a pretty solid war film. I quite enjoyed it. Nothing really new in it from anything before. Just another retelling of the horrors of World War One, I think. So yeah, so I would give this probably a 3-star. Just
all right.
A pretty standard. So not like amazing or anything like that. It's nothing new, nothing exciting. So yeah.
Well,
so that.
So you see, the thing with this is that this is a title that I know. I know the title, All Quiet on the Western Front, but because it's a famous title, but I never knew anything else about it. I never knew whether it was a book or whether it was a film. And then when I found out that, and I think when this film came out, there was a big deal made about this being a German version of the story.
Yes.
So was the original story German?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
See, I never
from the
knew
German
that.
perspective. Yeah, and I think it's in translation. I've got a copy around here somewhere. I don't think it's right here, but yeah, I have got a copy. I said I've got a bookcase next to me. I'm thinking it's not in this bookcase.
So
Yeah.
it's
But it's
yeah, I think it's been made like 2 or 3 times. I think there's about 3 other movies of it. So
I'm pretty sure there was one that did a whole bunch of things at the Oscars, like in maybe the 50s or the 60s or something like that.
I think this has been nominated again. I think this particular version has been nominated. I heard on the radio, but yeah, I think it has had an impact.
How many versions are there? I think there was one made in something like 1923, which was actually I think that was
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, so it's just one of those things that like the fact that this was made in German and people were and I was like, what? Oh, it's actually a German story. I never knew that.
Yeah.
So a bit like I Want to Dance with Somebody and you finding out all this music. I think even the fact that I'm all for cultures reclaiming stories from Hollywood. And if it's a German story that has never actually been filmed in German, then I'm like, yeah, all for that. So good for that. All Quiet on the Western Front 3. And now we go.
1930 was the first version. 1930.
Wow.
So that wasn't too long afterwards, really.
Yeah.
So that was
Before
1930. Yeah.
All right. So man, that is weird because I thought back then
before the Second World War. Yeah.
They'll just have done German's bad. You're not allowed to have a German as a protagonist. You're not allowed to do anything from a German point of view. So I find it fascinating that that was made then. But anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to and now we get to the cinema section, and this is what I'm going to call it. I think this is going to be the B movie section of cinema this week. And we start off with a film that just has like a lovely B movie title. I love the simplicity of it. I love the fact that this film is simply called Plane.
Plane, yes, Plane.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. So Sharon, you and Shaun saw this. Sharon, tell us, what is Plane about?
Plane. Well, Plane stars Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler. I feel like Gerard Butler he's now like a promise of a good time at the cinema. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's a promise of a good time at the cinema. Yeah, carry on.
He is the pilot of said plane. So it starts off. It's set in New Year's Eve, but apart from references to it, that doesn't really mean a lot. It's just like it's New Year's Eve. So I don't know why they made a big point of the fact that it's New Year's Eve, but they do. Anyway, there's a plane leaving Singapore, I believe, heading across the Philippines. And there's all sorts of people on this plane who are heading back home, having sort of spent sort of Christmas away, and then they're just heading back for New Year. And so it's not a full plane because it's so there's only about sort of 20 people on board with like a minimal flight crew. And you see Joe Butler sets up the scene that he's flying home, and he is told by one of the airport staff that there is a major storm, but they predict that it shouldn't be a problem. You can just fly above the storm and everything will be fine. But and he says, well, why don't we just fly around the storm? And they said, no, because that will cost you, the airline a lot of money and time. It'll add an extra hour and a half to your journey. Plus you'll burn another 28,000 litres of aviation fuel. No, fly. This is your flight path. You're going to fly through the storm. And so what happens? They fly through the storm and all hell breaks loose. So they get hit by lightning, engine fails, drama, screaming. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And then they actually drop out of this storm and they land on this remote island. And they find out, that's okay, we've landed, we're all fine now. No one's been killed horribly in the crash. Well, someone did, but that's another story. But we're okay. We're okay. We've made it.
That was. Can I just say that story Shaun was talking about is very, very incredibly convenient. That particular thing happens.
So I am going to get to the convenience of certain things. And then they find out that this island that they've landed on is part of like the Philippines sort of archipelago. I mean, there's hundreds of islands in the Philippines.
Yeah.
But this one is basically run by warlords and bandits. That there's no government, the army won't go there, so there's no rescue coming. But on this flight, you meet there's an Englishman, there's a couple of foreign students, there's a Korean couple, there's Americans, there's a bit of everyone on this plane. But there also happens to be a fugitive from justice. He was a man who was in the French Foreign Legion. He was accused of murder, and he has been extradited by an air marshal back to Canada.
Yeah.
And he is a man who's obviously a man with skills. He is big. He's built. He's been the French Foreign Legion.
Mike Coulter.
Quite convenient again.
Yeah. So and then during the kerfuffle when they were going through the storm, the air marshal got killed, and so we then have this dangerous fugitive from justice who is been extradited, handcuffed prisoner without a guard, and so he becomes an essential part of the story.
May I guess something out here? My guess that this fugitive from justice may not be all that it seems. He may not be as fugitive as you think he is,
and he may not be as bad as you think he is, because he's not been convicted. He was accused of a crime, and then he fled the country and he joined the French Foreign Legion. So he hasn't actually been convicted of anything. There's this allegation against him.
Yep.
So he's not actually a convicted bad guy. He could be just misunderstood.
Yeah.
And so we then have this situation where they're on this island, and then the bad guys, who are these bandits, these sort of warlords, who have a history of kidnapping foreign missionaries, holding them to ransom, and if they don't get the ransom paid, executing them. They had then decided that a plane load of foreign tourists,
ka-ching!
And so they think we need to get there. So then meanwhile the airline, the company is trying to locate where the plane is, and they worked out where the plane has come down, and so they can't get the military and they can't get their own people in, so they employ a group of mercenaries to go in and see if they can get them out. And then mayhem ensues. You've got the bad guy joining forces with the good guy versus the very bad guys versus the mercenaries, and then you've got mayhem, shooting, screaming, running around, doing stupid things. And then some of the stupid things are that they make choices that you think that's very convenient for the plot. I don't know if that would be very convenient if I was in that situation. Would I make those choices? But it's very convenient to make the plot work, to do what I want to the script.
Okay.
So instead of going in a linear fashion, it's like, if we make this really random choice here, we can get to this place and then we can do this thing. So it's almost like the plot is driving the story rather than human behaviour. But I know Shaun has got some things to say about that.
Huge things, yeah.
Okay, go for it. Go.
Okay. Oh, mate, what I could do with this? I could murder this film in about 3 minutes. But yeah, so I mean, okay, the idea is good, but it's like there's no what's the word? Not continuity. There's no. It's like they do things and then they think, how can you do that when you've just done this thing? You know what I mean? It's like, how can this is going to be a thing. How can you go through a storm, lose every piece of electric,
it's struck by lightning, so it zaps your plane.
So you've got to glide, and then later on you can put two wires together and wow, look, we got power. You know, oh look, we ditched all that fuel. Yeah, no. And the bit it went. I thought, okay, I'll try and be forgiven. I won't be too bad. But then there's a bit where he's trying to communicate. There's just like this abandoned building, and there's a guy like, I don't know, that's sort of trying to sneak up behind him and hits him on the back with a rucksack. And you know what I mean? If you're going to do something, you're not going to hit him on the back with a rucksack and then end up fighting them and getting.
Oh, so, yeah. You just go for the head. Go for the head and like.
you. I mean, it was. And after that, I was like, oh, what? You've got to be kidding me, man. But of course, it's just an action film, you know? And I mean, I suppose I should be more forgiving. And
ineptness on the part of the bad guys is sort of, you know,
they're totally
assumed that they're all horribly inept.
It's like it's like that silly movie, The Olympus Has Fallen, when you got like, they make like the SWAT teams and all that sort of stuff. And they're all there and they're all around and they're trained as well. You know what I mean? But no, they do.
Well, you see, now this is the thing I was talking about. Because it has Gerald Butler in it, I'm thinking this is going to be Olympus Has Fallen on a plane. Plane has fallen, if you will.
Yeah.
If you so
the worst one, I've got to say this one. The worst one was that when the hostages are on the bus and I'm going to have to do this thing, otherwise you know what I'm saying is. Oh, that really, that riled me up big time. That was
okay.
I could tell.
Stupid man.
Okay,
let me do that. No one would do that.
Anyway, all right, okay, cool. Let me. Okay, because obviously action movie, and the same way you sound like me when I'm complaining about horror movies, and I say like, I complain like, why would you do that? Obviously, the only reason you do that is because you're in a horror movie, and if you don't do that, it doesn't.
I do understand it.
Yeah, I know.
Film will be over within 5 minutes. Like,
exactly.
Don't open the door.
Exactly. Yeah.
This film's over.
Yeah. Sensible people do not make for good horror movies or action movies. But what I was trying to do is like, I would take this and I would like to compare it to a film that's absolutely ludicrous but a lot of fun, Con Air, which has a sort of similar premise in my head anyway. So if you were to compare Plane to Con Air, how do they compare?
Okay, well, I think to me, Con Air didn't really take itself too seriously, whereas this tried to take itself too seriously, and I think it did. I put it in the I think it tried to be anyway. That's what I think. I mean, Con Air was okay. I think it's an overrated movie myself. I think it's quite overrated. It's one of my overrated movies. But yeah, so. But this
okay.
Is like, you know,
all right. Okay,
I suppose this is what you should expect from Gerard Butler.
Yeah.
I class this in the Fast and Furious franchise, you know.
All right, cool. So Sharon, we'll go with you first. What did you think? How many stars?
Well, I thought it was ludicrous but fun. I mean, I did think it was fun. I think there was a few moments where, like, they like, this is my emotional bit. This is my emotional scene. So, watch me cry, people. And so I thought it was ludicrous but fun. So I enjoyed it. For all its faults, and it was riddled with them. I thought it was just a bit of fun and a bit of nonsense. So I would give it a 3. It was there's no harm in it other than the fact that you just got to turn your brain off when you're watching it.
Well, that's it. That's like a lot of them.
There should be a rating on posters that just has like a brain with an X on it.
Yeah.
to be fair to it, it was an action movie, as I say, and for all its stupid faults and everything like that. I did the last scene reminded me like something out of the Wild Geese. You know what I mean? When
yeah.
Like the Wild Geese. You know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
With like,
the airport.
Yeah, with like
Oh, so, yes, I know.
So
Wild I know
Geese, the end scene it is, like.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, absolutely hokum, absolutely ridiculous. But I think for the action bit with the shooting, when he's got the big, I don't know what they call them, big 50 caliber rifle shooting the blokes and sending them flying 500 yards was quite fun. So with those bits. So but daft. So I'll probably give it a 3-star. I think because it wasn't. Right. I mean, I can't. It's standard Gerard Butler fare.
I could almost see them making not sequels as such, but making them like sister films, because I think the mercenaries have sort of a bit of mileage in them, and I also think the bad guy maybe might be misunderstood. I think there might be mileage in other films there, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Plane flying again.
And
in a
yeah,
different
Plane 2,
form.
yeah, in a different form, yeah. Yeah, definitely franchise material.
I was listening.
It's amazing what you can do. It's amazing what you can do by putting two wires together.
I was listening to the Empire movie podcast, and they said that they're going to be really disappointed if there's not two sequels to this film called Train and Automobile. Which I thought, I was like, oh, I quite like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, cool. So now let's go off play. We are running over time, but never mind. We will get there. We go back to Netflix and Friends, and we go to a film called Do Revenge. I saw Do Revenge, and this is a film that is set. It is, first and foremost, it's a teen movie, but it's a teen movie that knows it's a teen movie. So it's set in a high school, and the whole idea is that at the beginning you meet this girl, and she is in the high school, but she's in like it's pretty much like a private school. So think of like an American private school, an American version of Eton, but it's co-ed, so there's men and women in there. She's going out with the most popular guy in the school, but everybody else in the school is rich. She got a scholarship, so she came from more, shall we say, humble means. But she's managed to get to the point where she's almost like valedictorian. There's a piece being done on her in some newspaper article and all that, and but her boyfriend at the time convinces her to send him a video, and then she sends him this video, and then this video goes viral across the whole school. Everybody sees this video. It's of an intimate nature, and that sort of so she punches him. It brings him down a peg, and she's kind of like on her last, like, if you do anything else, we're going to have to kick you out of the school. And this school is her path out of poverty, out of what her and her mom, because obviously in this sort of films there's always just a single parent, and it's always the mom. So like, it's her path out of it, because she goes, from here I'm going to go to Stanford, and from there rest of my life is that's where I make it for the rest of my life. And so she goes away for the summer, comes back after the summer, and everybody is like looking at her like, oh, her fall from grace. She was the queen bee of the school, and now she isn't there. And she meets another student who has transferred, and they end up doing this sort of strangers on the train kind of thing, where the student who has transferred to the school has a vendetta against somebody else in the school. And she's like, look, I can't do anything against the guy that wronged me, but I can take your revenge for you. You can take my revenge for me. So, that's where the title of the film comes from, Do Revenge. So let's do each other's revenge. And this film is, it's very easy to compare it to some of the classic teen films like Heathers, especially like Mean Girls, like, that go into an American high school and just sort of dissect the American high school. There's even a scene in this where they talk about the fact that when the new girl arrives at the school, and one of them is like, I'll give you a tour. It's like, you know what happens in every American high school? You have to go on a tour where you very clearly delineate what the different groups are. So those are the jocks, those are the things, those are the Instagram witches, all that kind of, and so the film knows exactly what it's doing, and it has fun with that. And one of my favorite lines in this film is where one of the person goes, okay, you're gonna have to infiltrate these people. You know what we have to do? And the other one is like, oh no, please don't say a makeover. And the other one goes, we're gonna have to do a makeover. And she's like, oh, that's so problematic. And the other one goes, yes, I know, but it's so much fun. and for me, that just so like encompasses the sense of humor this whole film has. It knows it's a teen movie. It knows that there's tropes that you expect in a teen movie, and it leans into some of those tropes. But it isn't saccharine. It isn't kind of like, by the numbers. It has a couple of twists in there. Some of the twists I don't think actually make sense. I think they're just there because it's trying very hard not to be your typical teen movie. And so it puts a twist in there that you wouldn't expect in a typical teen movie, but it kind of changes it by the end of the film. But I thought it was really good fun. It was easy to watch. And I think it's, even if you don't like teen movies, I think that there's stuff that happens in this film because it's quite close to the knuckle. It's quite close to the knuckle, like, things, whether it's not as gratuitous to say something like, that was that show that Zendaya's in, I can't remember.
Euphoria.
Yes, Euphoria. It's not like Euphoria where everybody's on drugs every 5 minutes, but it does touch on the fact that, like, teens are a lot more sexually active and a lot more experimental with substances than they used to be and all that. But I just thought that this was done really, really well. I thought it was quite cleverly scripted. I thought that the way it was put together, it zips along, and it's just a lot of fun. So I would actually give Do Revenge a 4 out of 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I would give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, even if you do not like teen movies, it is not necessarily that. I mean, the fact that it has that whole strangers on a train sort of conceit to it shows that they know a bit what they're doing in this film. They have a little bit more sort of like cinematic ideas to it, as opposed to, oh, I haven't got a boyfriend, so I'm sad. So it definitely isn't whatever that film is that you watched that you hated after. It definitely is not. Yeah, it is definitely not after. This is
drama. There's about 4 of those films now. There's so many.
I know.
Films.
I know. No, this is a teen movie of a different caliber. I would really recommend it. I would say go watch Do Revenge. And now we go back to cinema. And in cinema we have Megan.
We have Megan. Yes, we do.
We have Megan. Now this is
with a 3 in the middle. What's
with
that
a 3 in the middle. Yeah.
Instead of a 3 instead of an E. And not many people will get this. That means that Megan might just be Ghanaian, but but Megan would. Most people will get that, but it means that Megan might be Ghanaian. But Shaun, so you've seen this, and everything that you see about this film from the poster tells you this is a killer doll film. So tell us about it.
Okay, so what this is about is obviously it's a killer doll film, like a lot of killer doll films you can imagine. So basically, what happens is this young girl, she starts off in a car crash, or she gets hit by a truck. Just it's a little bit. Anyway, yeah. So they get hit by a truck. Obviously, she's the only survivor. She goes and lives with her auntie, and her auntie's like really into her work. She works on these like pet things for this giant company, which are making. Furbies basically. So like Furbies, and but they've been working on her and a couple of her friends have been working on this this other like AI android sort of thing. Anyway, so she decides that what she's going to do, because she's got to do all the work, she's going to use this android and she's going to make it friends with her niece. So and of course they bond with each other. So you've got the prime directive is protect at all costs. You know what I mean? So that's basically the story. And then there's like scenes which you see in the trailer where there's a boy that likes to hurt, and obviously goes. If you've seen the trailer, what goes on.
I haven't actually seen the trailer.
You haven't actually seen the trailer. Okay.
I saw the poster of this film, and from the poster I thought no.
Okay,
that's my reaction as well. I was like, no.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, Sharon. I think you should give this one a go, because it doesn't take itself too seriously. You know exactly where it's going to go. It sets you all up for, because there's obviously straight away there's this thing that you think, right, okay, so as we get towards the end of the film, there's this thing here that has been explained. You know what I mean? Oh, this is the neurotransmitter, and this was an early prototype, and all. So you'll think, right, okay, that's going to come into play. So we know that's going to happen. And it's like a comedy, really, to be fair, but a very subtle comedy. And there's even a bit where the doll sings, which is, and people were laughing. People were laughing at this film. It's it was a real surprise. It wasn't like, obviously it's got elements of slasher pics and your normal movie tropes when it comes to killer dolls and things, but it's not like it doesn't. You know what it is. It's not like trying to be clever. It doesn't try to be clever. It doesn't. It's what it is. And I quite like that about this film, is that it tells you what's going to happen, and it's like got all the tropes of all the other ones from like Saturn V or Saturn 3 and some of the other ones, killer androids, artificial androids. She becomes more intelligent. She got the old Terminator things where she can, like the Terminator with the
like the head-up display,
head emotions and stuff like that, and like, oh, your heartbeat has increased, you know what I mean, and like all the different emotions and stuff. Why is and obviously there's people that are quite because to start off with, it gradually gets worse. Turn yourself off, Megan. So like turn off, and then there's the time. Turn yourself, and she doesn't turn herself off. She becomes more self-aware and more. So yeah, it's your. Yeah.
I mean, having AI in a film never goes badly. Never. I mean,
that's it. Yeah.
Come on, it always ends up in in a field and everything is rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah. So I mean, I quite enjoyed this one. As I say, it wasn't horror. It wasn't horror. There was obviously you do see bits of blood, but it wasn't particularly slashery, gratuitous.
You're saying Megan isn't Chucky.
Megan isn't Chucky. I mean, she's probably as evil as Chucky, and
yeah.
I'm pretty sure there'd be a sequel to this somehow. I don't know because let's just say with all electrical intelligence,
they don't die.
Should we say in the auntie's house? What they like Alexa things, but an advanced Alexa-y type thing.
What you're saying is that this film ends with Megan uploading herself to the fridge.
Well, it does.
The fridge,
possibly, possibly, yeah.
Come back for the sequel, Hot Point. Hot Point, where a washing machine walks around killing people.
Yeah, and I quite like that. Because you knew what was you knew what it was, and in fact, I knew from.
That's Maximum Overdrive, isn't it, with the Stephen King story?
It is. As soon as you see this type advanced Alexa type module thing in the house, you just think that's gonna come in. That's
demon scene. Here we go.
Yeah. That's it. So yeah, like a BB-8 out of.
If only they'd seen more cinema, they would avoid all these things, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's kind of it actually makes you feel that the people who are in these films have never actually watched a film before. That's the only way this works. It's that you've never actually watched a film before. So all films exist in this place where films don't exist, essentially.
And there's obviously what I call the Westworld moment. There's always a Westworld moment, isn't it? You know what I mean? Which is So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was quite good. I don't think it was trying to take itself too seriously. A little bit of a comedy. So certainly that song was funny. That was like a. Anyway.
All right. So how many stars would you give Megan?
Okay, I'll give this a 3-star one. This was the 3-star one.
3 stars to go with the 3 that replaces the E in the name Megan. Do they ever explain why that 3 is there?
Yes, they do, because it stands for. What does it stand for? It actually says, it's I can't remember now. Something. Anyway, it's an acronym for something, but I can't remember what it is offhand. So, but it's definitely right, something like the Android something. I don't know. Anyway, something like that. Megan.
Okay,
so I don't know.
As I'm saying, but the backwards 3, as I said, does mean that Megan is Ghanaian, which means her name would actually be Megan. So
Megan.
Yeah, because that's actually a letter in Ghana. But anyway, now let's go to a final thing this week, and that is Pepsi Where's My Jet? This is a documentary series on Netflix, and it is based around the fact that, whenever every now and then drinks companies do. I'm not sure. I don't think I've actually seen one in the UK, but I know that I saw them in Nigeria all the time when you're growing up. So your Coca-Colas and Pepsis, which are the big 2 companies, they would do an advert. They would do a a promotion. They'll do a promotion. Actually, I've seen Walkers do it here. Like maybe a new film's coming out, so they'll say, collect all these different things. And if you collect all these different things, you can get stuff. And Pepsi did one where they had an advert for it, which was all about Pepsi points. So they would go and they would do, they would say, get all these different, if you drink a whole bunch of Pepsi and you bring all the slips or the cans and everything here, you can exchange it to Pepsi and you can get a Walkman, or you can get a this and you can get a that. And they had a TV advert to advertise this whole thing about this guy who gets all this stuff. He gets a leather jacket, he gets sunglasses, he gets a Walkman. And at the end, the final thing that said in this advert was they had a Harrier jet. Like this kid arrives to school in a Harrier jet, and they said 7 million points. 7 million points, get a Harrier jet. And this is all about this kid who saw this ad. And because the guys who made the ad did not have a disclaimer at the bottom that says, only for promotional purposes, only blah, blah, blah. He said, hang on, there's no disclaimer. That means if I get 7 million Pepsi points, they will give me a jet. And so he makes his whole thing in life about, I'm going to get that jet. And it's about this teenager who decides to go get the jet. And because he is a climbing instructor, he happens to know this millionaire. And this millionaire is kind of like, think Richard Branson, like the kind of person who really is like, I just want to stick it to the man and stick my thumb right in his eye and say, you guys, you corporate people, you don't know what you're on about. that kind of guy.
That corporate guy.
Well, essentially, the guy who's made a lot of money, probably through something corporate, but hates everything corporate. and all he wants to do is like, he hates Pepsi, and you have this suspicion that he hates Pepsi because Pepsi has more money than him. So he wants to take, and it's all about what they do to try and get 7 million Pepsi points and drink enough Pepsi to get 7 million points to go and get that jet. And how they go through the whole point, and they get to the point where they actually have it, and they say, Pepsi, we have enough points, where's our jet? And it goes into legal battles and everything, because Pepsi are trying to avoid giving them a jet because they're like, it was obviously a joke, and they were like, you say it's obviously a joke, but you didn't put in there anything that said it was a joke. You didn't put a disclaimer. And they speak to everybody. They speak to the people who made the ad. They speak to the Pepsi executives. They speak to the kid who actually did it. They speak to the millionaire who was bankrolling him. They speak to all these different people. They speak to Cindy Crawford, because Cindy Crawford was like a big Pepsi person, and she had, like her ad that was shown during the Super Bowl is still one of the most viewed ads of all time. And they speak to, and they say, okay, what was Pepsi like at that time? What was going on? Everything like. There's even a bit where they go to the Philippines to find out if Pepsi have like a track record of not keeping up with their promises. And this starts out really, really engaging. Really engaging. You're like, oh, what's going on here? It starts off like a bit of a laugh and everything like that. But the problem I had was that as it went on and on, after a while, you're like, okay, why are they still going on with this? As a bit of fun, yes. As to sort of show that you guys, you corporate guys, you forgot to put a disclaimer, and so we're going to make you pay for that. Yes. But then it gets to a point where you're like thinking, why are you carrying on with this? And
are you wasting the court's time with this or whatever?
Well, there's this weird thing, and I don't know whether it's an American thing or anything like that, where there seems to be this conflation with, if I do this, I have achieved something in my life. And there seems to be a thing where, like, people feel like, I haven't really done anything in my life. I haven't put myself on the map. Therefore, if I do this, I will be on the map and I will get something. And so much so that, it never really examines that, or it doesn't really go into why these people are doing this. And it sort of peters out towards the end. So it peters out, so it starts off really, really engaging and really, really, oh my God, this is so crazy. I can't believe somebody actually did this. And in the first couple of episodes, you will be like, I can't believe this actually happened. I can't believe people actually went to these lengths. But then as it gets towards the end, I think there's only about 3 or 4 episodes. As it gets towards the end, you're kind of like, okay, that kind of fizzled out. And I could almost see the guys in the edit suite thinking, guys, we need an ending. We don't really have an ending. And so the ending they come up with is so down pat, and it's kind of like, how I was talking about biopics, and like it's like the ending they come up with is kind of like that actually leaves a no.
Is that it?
No. Yeah, it is a real, it's that it. So I think it's great. I'll give it a 3 out of 5, but I do think that there's more that could have been examined with it, but it's more like a sort of like a pop culture thing. But I still think that Netflix do really good documentaries, especially about things that if you're not American, like I'm not American, I wasn't in America at that time, didn't know about this. So I think it's quite cool. So that's 3 stars for Pepsi Where's My Jet. Now, all that is left to figure out is for you guys to try and figure out who has won this week. Who won this week, cinema or Netflix and Friends?
I think with me giving the Whitney movie just... So I think Cinema's picked it, because otherwise it's all pretty much...
Well, I thought it was... I think it might be a draw, because I know you had your 4, but then Tosin, you have a 4.
Oh, yeah, you had a 4.
One of your
Netflix
programs. So it's I think we've had equal 3s and then 1 4 on each side. So I'm inclined to think it might have been a tie.
I give Matilda a 4.
Matilda was a 4.
4, yeah. So that was 2 Cinema 4s.
Oh, that was Cinema 4. So, 4. Oh, the Cinema's got it. Sorry, I thought that was a 4 for a Netflix film. No, Cinema's got it then.
Oh, Netflix also did have a 4, but we've been on here too long, so I'm just going to put you out of the misery and let you know this week the winner is by an average. Okay, let's put it this way. We had an average. We're talking the average of all the stars. One of these has 3.25 on average, and one of these has 3.375 on average.
Oh.
Cinema has pipped it. Cinema has just pipped it this week. I think
But
largely
on
due
the
to
whole, on the whole, it's been
a good week.
It's been a good
yeah,
week.
it's been a good week.
There is nothing that we hated this week.
No.
There's nothing that we hated, which is good, which is a nice welcome change of pace for us.
Yes.
Like there's anything that we
It's a good job we didn't talk about Persuasion, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Oh no. Okay. Persuasion. If you listen to this for the first time, Persuasion is now a running joke. It's now a running joke, which Shaun will probably say that's the whole film. Persuasion is a joke. but not a very funny one. But yeah, we'll do that next week. Hopefully by next week, Holly will be back with us, and then we can talk about Persuasion, which Shaun and I would have finished watching by then, and we can come and join in everybody else's misery. So until that time, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye for me.
Thank you very much for joining us.